What's up, everybody? Last night we got another great episode of The Mandalorian in Chapter 18, and this season continues to carry the greatness of the first two. Before we get into it, I'm going to give my one and only spoiler warning for the video, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, go ahead and leave a like on this video so you can save it for later and make your way back after you watch. Now let's get into it. So we start out on Tatooine, and it's actually Boonta Eve, which is a great callback to the Phantom Menace, where we of course see the pod race that is known as the Boonta Eve Classic. Some quick backstory on that: it's held by the Hutts, of whom we've seen many through multiple projects in Star Wars history, and we actually see the foundation of the Boonta Eve Classic in the Darth Plagueis novel, where Gardulla the Hutt bargains with Darth Plagueis regarding the race. But anyway, back to Mando. We open up with Pelimoto this episode as she's running a scam out of her shop with the Jawas, where she has them disassemble speeders to drive customers into her business for a big profit. Pretty ingenious if you ask me. Once she finishes up her business deal, we see the N1 coming down behind her, and we know that Din has come looking for the part he needs to fix IG-11 to explore Mandalore. And before we get into that, really, I do want to say I almost would have put this at the end of episode 1, rather it was after the visit to Bo-Katan's castle, or instead of that visit, but having seen this episode, I do sort of understand their decision to do what they did, and we'll get into that later on in the breakdown. For now, it's an unfortunate situation on Tatooine as Peli informs Din that her Jawas will be unable to secure the necessary parts, so she instead offers him R5. And if you recognized R5, you should have, because he's the same droid that had a bad motivator in A New Hope when Luke and Uncle Owen are buying droids from the Jawas, and his short circuit leads to R2 joining the pair. So Din ultimately takes R5, even though Peli does tell him 1 second too late that he's still the same droid that can short circuit. He takes him anyways because he can still take a sample of the air on Mandalore to assure that it's breathable when they get there, and they jettison off through the fireworks of Boonta Eve. From there, we once again arrive in the Mandalore system, as Din points out both Concordia and Kalevala to Grogu. The first because it is the planet where Din grew up, and of course was the base of the Death Watch during the Clone Wars series. He then mentions Kalevala, not because it's where we visited last week at Bo-Katan's castle, but this time because it's very important that he shows Grogu where it is on the holomap inside the N1, and we'll see why later on. As Din enters Mandalore's atmosphere, we're met with a really cool storm sequence that's contained completely in the clouds, with the sky around it being clear. It was a really cool thing to see that we do see once again when Bo goes to rescue Din, and I almost think it was meant to show the impact the Empire had on the planet, but there's another impact that they confirm they had as we figure out that after the bombardment of the planet on the Night of 1,000 Tears, it's become a complete dead zone, and you can't communicate with anyone off-world once you're on the surface. So Din, Grogu, and R5 are on their own. Once they're down on the surface of the planet, R5 ventures out to test the air quality and see if it's breathable or not so that they can venture further, but before he can complete that task, he's snatched away by these cave beasts that recur multiple times in the episode, and I'm pretty sure they're trying to draw Din into a trap here. However, their attempt fails as Din makes easy work of them using his blaster, his vibroblade, and the Darksaber to take them out. Then we get to the goods. For the fans of the Clone Wars, this was an awesome episode as we venture into the city of Sundari, which is a shell of what it used to be in its glory days before the Empire. As Din ventures into the Civic Center, he's quickly trapped by this giant robot who now is this thing that we meet, and he's quite the creation. It goes from being like a crab droid to being this weird cyborg lizard that kind of looks like General Grievous to being this crawling brain. It was almost like one of those nesting dolls. But as he's taken to that beast's lair, Grogu follows and continues to show off his improved abilities, but when he gets to Din, he's unable to rescue him, and Din, who's tied up just like Han in Return of the Jedi, mutters to Grogu to go get Bo, and we see Grogu kick his little pod into high gear, and it's really cool seeing the time with Luke pay off as Grogu exits the cave and sends one of those beasts from before flying as he returns to the N1 and shows R5 Kalevala on the holomap as they jettison off to try and save Din. We cut to Kalevala where we get another sinister sequence from Bo-Katan as she still wants absolutely nothing to do with the pair. When she sees the N1, she drops a cold, "Let's get rid of them once and for all," and heads out to the ship spewing, asking if she wasn't clear enough when they were there the last time. However, her tone shifts the second that the ship opens and she sees that it's only Grogu in the ship, and she jumps right on it for a reason that we can only speculate on for now, but I think will be made clear in the future. They hop in her ship, leaving the N1 at her castle as they head to rescue Din, who's having just an awful day. Katie Sackhoff did a really good job this episode of portraying the weight that returning to Mandalore carries with Bo-Katan through a helmet even. The pauses and the tone in her voice were absolutely incredible as she demonstrated multiple times what this planet truly means to her character. Once they're down on the planet, Grogu shows her the way to Din, but the second they arrive in the creature's lair, they're spotted, and Bo has to fend off the beast, and she does it with the darksaber. This was a really powerful scene because she still has it with the saber. We saw earlier in the episode that even after his training with the armorer, Din still is not great with it, but to see Bo just pick it up and wield it with such ease really alluded back to her time with it, and who knows, maybe we'll get to see more of that in flashbacks this season. Once they've rescued Din and regrouped, he immediately wants to go back into the mines. However, Bo-Katan is going to come with them this time as a guide, and on this journey, we learn a ton of stuff about Bo as we really see a new side of her. She talks about how she wishes their people weren't always fighting each other because it's what made them weak. We've seen her throw some shade towards Din about this before, but this time, it felt like she was almost taking ownership of some of it, and maybe has some guilt layered within about what she's done in the past. We also find out that her father, who is the father of Satine from the Clone Wars, gave his life fighting for Mandalore, which is something we never had mentioned before from either sister, and I think this is something they'll explore and maybe even have it be the reason that Satine chose to go the route of peace when she became Duchess. But between Bo and Din, there were some really deep moments this episode, and it seems they're setting up either a big conflict between the two or possibly a surprise relationship. It's so hard to tell as Bo drops cold lines in her castle, but then at the same time, she rushes off to save Din. However, once we arrive at the living waters in the mines of Mandalore, it feels as if it'll be the latter in some sense. You see Bo start to sarcastically show Din all the specialties that come with the mines and the ritual he's gonna do, but it's not until Din begins the ritual that you see her seemingly questioning her beliefs, and this moment lingers but is quickly ditched as Din rapidly drops to the bottom of the waters and she has to jump in to rescue him. And to me, this looked like he got ripped down by something, and oh, we'll talk about what that something is in just a second. But I've also seen people thinking that he just fell quickly because of the weight of his Beskar and the massive drop off from the step into the water. And honestly, I could really see either case being true, but I don't think it matters that much because there is something much more important down there, and that's the Mythosaur, the ancient beast of Mandalore that gives you more control over the Mandalorians than the Darksaber itself, and used to be tamed by the ancient warrior culture Mandalorians. However, this is our first look at the beast, as it was said to be a myth throughout the first two seasons of the show and even in Book of Boba Fett, but oh man, is it real, and it's enormous. I can't wait to see it emerge from the depths of the water later on in the season so we can see it in its entirety and how much trouble it's gonna cause, because it certainly startled Bo-Katan when she was carrying Din to the surface. This was a really great ending to another good episode for Season 3 of The Mandalorian, and I hope that they continue this quality as we continue through the season because it's a really good feeling to be enjoying Star Wars once again. But I want to know what you thought about this week's episode, so go ahead and let me know down in the comments below what you thought about Chapter 18 of The Mandalorian, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, go ahead and leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on my coverage of Season 3, as well as daily news and theories. And as you head out, I want to thank you for checking this breakdown out, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode as much as I did. And most of all, have a great day.